The room was full, but no one breathed. Cameras blinked under bright lights. Reporters leaned in, their pens frozen halfway to the page. At the White House press podium, President Trump didn't bother with an opening. He tossed the usual script aside and went straight for what he called a radical threat to national unity. His voice was sharp, his jaw locked. He didn't name her at first, just circled around it. A congresswoman encouraging rebellion, lying about my executive order. Then he said it. Jasmine Crockett should be investigated for sedition. Frankly, she should be jailed. A single sentence, that's all it took. The air changed. Some reporters gasped, others just stared. It wasn't politics anymore. It was personal. Cut to a quiet office in Dallas. Jasmine Crockett stood behind her desk, arms crossed, watching the clip on a phone screen. Her staff held their breath. She didn't. "Play it again," she said. Softly, no yelling, no pacing, just stillness. Not because she didn't care, because she was planning something bigger than anger. Across the country, people were watching. A college barista paused mid-shift to replay the moment. A grandmother in Mississippi whispered, "Lord, I remember this feeling." A high schooler in New York texted a friend. He really just said that. Then came the call. Jasmine to her mother. "You saw it?" she asked. Her mom's voice cracked. "I did. You okay?" Jasmine's answer was calm. "I'm good." But this just became bigger than me. The screen cut back to her team. 1-8 asked, "What now?" Jasmine looked up. "We respond," she said. "Ah, but not how they expect." "Ah." Screen fades to black. 4 words appear, and when she spoke, the nation listened. 3 days before the president's threat shook the country. Jasmine Crockett stood under a gray Texas sky outside a small courthouse in Fort Worth. The crowd was small, but her words carried like they were meant for millions. She didn't use dramatic language, no raised voice, just calm truth. She held a printed copy of the executive order, flipped to a specific page, and began reading. "This isn't about election safety," she said. "It's about control." She pointed to the lines that mattered most, lines that moved polling places out of Black and Latino neighborhoods. That gave vague powers to federal officers to relocate voting sites in case of unrest. Then came the line that made her pause. In the event of civic disruption or verified misinformation, the federal government may suspend or relocate polling stations to preserve order. She looked up and said, "They can move a polling place because someone lies on Twitter. That's not security. That's a trap." Behind the scenes, the weight of her words was growing. That same day, Jasmine received 2 leaked emails from inside the Department of Justice. One directed federal lawyers to support the president's agenda when dealing with voting station locations. The second was worse. It named her, directly calling her a rising threat to administrative unity. Jasmine read that line twice. It wasn't about elections anymore. It wasn't about policy. They were watching her. They were labeling her a problem before she even raised her voice. Quietly, she slid the printed emails into a folder and told her aide, "We'll use them, but on our terms." The next morning, Jasmine sat at her office desk. No TV crew, no dramatic lighting, just a phone propped on a stack of folders aimed slightly upward. She wore a navy blouse, light makeup, hair pulled back. Then she hit go live. Within seconds, a few hundred viewers joined. She started simple. "Good morning. I want to talk about why the President of the United States threatened to jail me on national television." Her tone was steady, not soft. She pulled out the same executive order, held it to the camera, and began highlighting it. Slowly, carefully. "This line right here," she said, tapping with a yellow marker, "means they can shut down a voting location if someone starts a rumor." She let that sink in. You don't need voter fraud to close a polling place. You just need a tweet. More people joined the stream, 10,000, then 50,000, then hundreds of thousands. Jasmine opened her email and shared her screen. She showed the leaked DOJ memo. "This is real," she said. "They knew what they were doing, and they knew I was going to say something. So they tried to scare me silent." She stared into the camera. "This isn't oversight, it's suppression. And if you're scared of me speaking truth, good. Because I'm not stopping." She didn't yell. She didn't cry. But her voice was clear, like someone who had been holding it in long enough. Across the country, something shifted. People didn't just hear her, they felt her. In a cafe in Arizona, a woman wiped away tears and whispered, "She said it." In Ohio, a teenager reposted the clip with the caption, "This, all of this." In small towns and big cities, people started making signs, handwritten, messy, honest. Some quoted the Constitution, others just said, "We hear you." Candlelight. Vigils appeared in unexpected places. Churches, school steps, barber shops. Nobody waited for permission. The hashtag stand with Jasmine exploded. But it wasn't driven by influencers or politicians. It was teachers, nurses, grocery clerks, veterans, students. People who didn't usually share political videos started stitching her live stream into their own. One clip showed a mother and daughter watching on a couch. Another showed a line cook turning up the volume in a crowded diner. Everyone heard something that made them stop what they were doing. Meanwhile, inside the White House, panic was setting in. Trump paced behind closed doors, furious. "Why is this still a story?" he barked. One advisor wiped sweat from his forehead and said, "We underestimated her." Another chimed in. She didn't yell. That's what made it worse. A silence fell across the room. Then the president snapped. "She wants a war. She'll get it." He ordered retaliation, stronger statements, more pressure. But it was already too late. The fire had spread. People weren't just watching Jasmine anymore. They were standing with her. The studio lights weren't bright on purpose. No big stage, no dramatic music. Just a small room, 2 chairs, and a camera. Jasmine Crockett sat across from veteran journalist Jonah Frank on State Line Weekly, a Sunday night political show known more for its silence than sound bites. Jonah didn't start with easy questions. "The president said you should be jailed," he said calmly. "Have you received any direct threats since?" Jasmine didn't blink. "More than one," she replied. "Voicemails, messages. But threats aren't new to women who speak clearly. They just get louder when we stop whispering." Then, without raising her voice, she pulled out the executive order again, the same one she'd shown during her live stream. She held it up, turned to a marked clause, and read aloud. Then came the DOJ memos. The words "rising threat to administrative unity" sat under her finger like a loaded weapon. "This isn't about me," she said, meeting the camera's gaze. "It's about who they're really targeting. The people who still believe their vote matters." Across the country, living rooms were quiet. Parents muted cartoons. Teens turned their phones to full volume. Jasmine wasn't performing. She was explaining. Attain America was listening. By the time the interview ended, the network had recorded its second highest viewer engagement in history. The only episode that ranked higher aired after 9/11's. But the wave of truth didn't come without a storm. Within hours, the smear campaign kicked off. A far-right website ran a headline: "Crockett funded by extremist ties." No sources, no proof, just noise. It didn't matter that the donation was legal and years old. The goal wasn't accuracy, was confusion. Soon, cropped protest. Clips started spreading. One video placed Jasmine near a protest she wasn't even at. A radio host claimed she was an actor planted by the deep state. A podcast called her a professional agitator. And then someone spray-painted the word traitor across a billboard of her face in Dallas. Her team sat with her, watching. The noise grew louder. "Should we respond?" her aide asked. Jasmine shook her head. "Let them empty the tank." The words weren't bitter, they were calm, like someone who'd seen storms before. "If they're attacking me for reading a law," she said later, in a clip posted to her own feed, "what does that say about the law? And what does it say about the people attacking me?" But the biggest crack came not from the media or the protests, but from inside the very system trying to bury her. At 11:37 p.m., when most of the country was asleep, the Department of Justice quietly uploaded a press release. No announcement, no press conference. Just a hidden PDF buried on there. Website between a cybercrime update and a staffing note. But someone found it, a law professor in Louisiana, and posted it online with just 3 words. "This changes everything," in the second paragraph. The DOJ admitted procedural lapses in the internal handling of communications related to the executive order and Jasmine Crockett's case. They didn't call the order illegal, but they didn't defend it either. And they acknowledged that someone inside the DOJ had pressured staff to follow political orders. By sunrise, the internet had turned on its head. Every major outlet ran the story. And Jasmine, once again, didn't wait for someone else to spin it. She went live that morning, no makeup, no flash, just her voice. "This is the same law. Same memo. I haven't changed, but you've paid attention. Now they have too." That same afternoon, the first crack in the political wall appeared. Senator Maxine Rell, a Republican from Arizona known for staying silent, stepped in front of the press and said what nobody expected. "I've read the full order. I've spoken to constitutional lawyers. I've watched Congresswoman Crockett's video. I may not agree with her politics, but I agree with her here. Threatening someone with jail for reading a law. Not in my name. I won't support this order." Words moved like fire. More lawmakers followed. Some made vague statements about concerns with implementation. Others were more direct. "This feels off," one said. "We're not in the business of punishing speech," said another. The power that had once belonged only to the White House was now slipping because one woman read a law out loud and dared the country to listen. The vote was closer than anyone expected, 51-49, but it was enough. The executive order was frozen. Just like that, the document that started a fire across the country was no longer enforceable. Outside the Capitol, a small crowd stood huddled in the cold, staring at their phones as the result came through. Some gasped. Others clapped. One mother looked down at her 2 sons and whispered, "She's the one who told the president no." The younger one smiled and nodded like he already knew. But Jasmine wasn't outside. She was already back at work now. Press, no speech, no celebration. A few hours after the vote, she sat in a quiet office in D.C. with 3 other lawmakers from both parties. They weren't there to talk. They were there to write. A bipartisan team had asked Jasmine to help draft real election reform, not a stunt, not a headline, but actual change. The room was silent, except for scribbled notes and the sound of a whiteboard marker squeaking against glass. Someone suggested adjusting a line in the draft. Jasmine looked up and said, "If we're going to fix it, it needs to be worth fixing." Over the next 2 weeks, they built it line by line, word by word. What came out was a 36-page bill called the Voter Integrity and Accessibility Framework, a roadmap for fairer elections, clearer oversight, and real protections against suppression. When reporters asked for a statement, Jasmine didn't hold a press conference. Instead, she hosted a quiet Zoom call with a group of high school civic students. She held up the draft and said, "This belongs to you," back in her district. Something had shifted. Churches were hosting Ask Me About My Ballot nights. Grocery stores put out flyers about voter rights. Barbershops had stacks of registration forms sitting next to clippers and magazines. Jasmine didn't tweet much. She walked through neighborhoods, instead no security detail, no spotlight. Just her, stopping to shake hands, to listen, to remind people that their voice still mattered. At a town hall, an 11-year-old girl stood up, voice shaking, and said, "My dad said we're going to vote together next time. First time watching." Jasmine smiled, knelt to her level, and replied, "That's your right. Protect it with everything you've got." Later that night, back at the office, Jasmine sat quietly while her aide organized the next day's meetings. "You've done more than most people ever dream," the aide said. Jasmine shook her head. "I didn't come here to be a headline," she said. "I came to make sure the next girl doesn't need a live stream to defend herself." And that's exactly what she did. She didn't just survive a threat. She lit a path.